You are surrounded by water. Millions of gallons of it stretch out in every direction as far as your eyes can see. The ocean is right there. But you cannot drink a single drop. Your lips are cracked. Your throat is burning. And if you take just one sip of the water around you, you will die faster than if you drank nothing at all. This was the daily reality for pirates sailing the open seas hundreds of years ago. And yet, somehow, these men survived for months at a time on wooden ships with no modern technology, no plastic bottles, and no clean water supply. They figured out ways to turn one of the most dangerous liquids on Earth into something they could actually drink. And what they discovered was so clever that parts of it are still used in the world today. This is the story of how pirates turned seawater into drinking water. Before we talk about the solutions, we need to understand the problem. Seawater is not just salty. It is dangerously salty. The salt content in seawater is about 3 times higher than what your kidneys can safely handle. When you drink it, your body cannot just remove all that extra salt on its own. So instead, it starts pulling water out of your own cells and organs just to try and balance things out. The result is that you end up losing more fluid than you took in. You become more thirsty, not less. Your muscles begin to cramp. Your stomach turns. Your mind starts playing tricks on you. Sailors lost at sea would sometimes see freshwater springs on the horizon that did not exist at all. Their bodies were so desperate for water that their brains created images of it. And if they kept drinking seawater, they would eventually die. Pirates learned this the hard way. New crew members who had never sailed long distances would sneak sips of ocean water when no one was looking. Within hours, they were sick. Within days, some were dead. The message spread quickly through every port and every ship. Seawater was not a lifeline. It was a trap. And that made the pirates' situation almost impossibly cruel. They were surrounded by liquid, and none of it could save them. So the first thing clever captains did was look up at the sky. Rain. When a storm came, pirates did not hide from it. They ran toward it. They stretched out every spare tarp, every extra piece of cloth, and every sail they could find across the deck of the ship. They tied ropes and built simple channels using scraps of wood and bits of metal so that rainwater would flow in one direction straight into their storage barrels. They became experts at catching every single drop that fell from the sky. But there was a problem. The sails and tarps on a pirate ship were constantly soaked in salty sea spray. If you ran clean rainwater through a salty sail, you just got slightly less salty water. Still not safe to drink. So pirate crews developed a habit of cleaning their canvas carefully before any storm arrived. They would rinse the sails with what little fresh water they had saved, or leave them to dry in the sun until the salt flaked off on its own. It took time and effort. But it meant their collected rainwater actually tasted like water instead of the sea. Some crews became so skilled at this system that they could collect dozens of gallons during a single storm. That water could last them for weeks. But the problem was obvious. You cannot control the weather. Ships could sail for weeks without a single drop of rain falling, especially in parts of the Caribbean where clear blue skies could stretch on endlessly. Pirates needed more than hope and tarps. That is when they started collecting dew. Yes, dew. The thin layer of moisture that forms on cool surfaces in the early morning hours when the air is humid. Pirates would take thick pieces of cloth or animal hides, usually sheepskin, and hang them outside overnight. As the temperature dropped, moisture from the air would slowly collect on the fabric. In the morning, crew members would carefully wring those hides out over a container. The amount of water was small, sometimes just a few cups per hide. But on a desperate ship, a few cups could be the difference between life and death. Different crews tried different materials. Some used thick rope. Some used bundles of moss they had picked up from islands during stops on land. Some used their own extra clothing. Anything that could soak up moisture from the night air was worth trying. It was slow, uncomfortable work that never produced enough water on its own. But pirates learned to combine methods. Rain catching plus dew collection plus whatever else they could manage. Every single drop counted. But even when pirates managed to collect enough water, keeping it safe to drink was an entirely different battle. Pirate ships stored their drinking water in large wooden barrels called butts. These were made from thick oak wood, sealed tightly with tar and pitch. They looked solid and reliable. But wood is not a perfect container for water. It breathes. It absorbs. And when you fill a wooden barrel with water and leave it sitting in the heat of a ship for days or weeks, terrible things start to happen inside. Bacteria love warm, dark, wet spaces. A sealed wooden barrel sitting in tropical heat was a perfect home for them. Within days, the water inside would begin to change. It would develop a strange color, sometimes green, sometimes brown. It would start to smell wrong. A slimy film would coat the inside of the barrel walls. The water would taste like something had gone very wrong inside that container. Because it had. The water that was supposed to save the crew's lives had turned into something that could make them very sick. Pirates tried everything to fix this. They rinsed barrels between uses. They dried them in the sun. They sealed the lids more tightly. Nothing worked well enough. The water kept going bad. The crews kept getting sick. And a sick crew could not sail properly or fight when they needed to, which was a serious problem for men whose lives depended on both. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Fire. Somebody, at some point during those desperate years at sea, had the idea of burning the inside of a barrel before filling it with water. It sounds like it would make things worse. A black, charred barrel seems like it would make the water taste like ash and smoke. But what actually happened was the complete opposite. Water stored in a charred barrel stayed cleaner for much longer than water stored in a normal one. What pirates had stumbled onto, without knowing the science behind it, was charcoal filtration. When you burn the inside of a wooden barrel, you create a thin layer of activated carbon coating the interior walls. That charred layer traps bacteria and other harmful particles. It slows down the process of water going bad. It removes some of the bad smell and some of the bad taste. The water stored inside a burnt barrel was noticeably cleaner and safer to drink. This discovery spread fast. Captains began ordering their men to char every barrel before filling it. Ships that used this method kept their crews healthier. And here is the most remarkable part of this story. The same technique of charring the inside of a barrel is still used today in the production of whiskey and bourbon. Distillers burn the insides of oak barrels because the charred wood changes the flavor and filters the liquid stored inside. Pirates invented that process centuries ago simply because they were desperate to survive. But the most impressive accidental discovery pirates made involved their own coins. Silver coins. The same coins they fought over, stole, and hoarded in chests below deck. When pirates dropped silver coins into their water barrels, the water stayed fresher and cleaner for longer. They noticed this completely by accident. Some captains kept personal coins in their private water supply and noticed over time that their water lasted better than the water in the crew barrels. Word spread quickly. Sailors started dropping silver coins into their storage containers. And it worked. The reason, which no pirate could have explained at the time, is that silver is naturally antibacterial. Silver releases tiny particles called ions into the water around it. Those ions attack the cell walls of bacteria and stop them from reproducing. The bacteria die. The water stays clean. Silver did not just slow down contamination the way charred wood did. It actively killed the harmful organisms before they could take over. The practical advantage was enormous. Silver coins could be fished out when a barrel was emptied, rinsed off, and dropped straight into the next barrel. The same coins could be used over and over again. In a world where every resource mattered, that made silver one of the most valuable things a pirate ship could carry. Not for what it was worth on land, but for what it could do at sea. Even today, hospitals use silver in medical equipment and wound dressings because of its antibacterial properties. Pirates figured this out centuries before modern medicine caught up. When rain failed, when dew was not enough, and when the barrels were running dangerously low, the most resourceful pirates turned to the most ambitious method of all. They decided to make their own freshwater from the sea itself. The process is called distillation. You heat seawater over a fire until it turns into steam. The steam rises and is guided through a tube into a separate container, where it cools and turns back into liquid water. The critical thing is this. When seawater becomes steam, the salt does not make that journey. Only pure water evaporates. The salt stays behind in the original pot. What you collect at the end of this process is clean, safe, drinkable water made directly from the ocean. Pirates built small distillation rigs right on their ships. They used copper pots connected to metal tubes that directed the steam away from the heat source and into cooler containers where it could condense. Copper was a practical choice because it conducted heat efficiently and did not rust quickly in salty sea air. In many cases, those copper parts were made from melted down coins or other stolen metal objects, which is a very pirate solution to a very serious engineering problem. One of the most successful pirates in history, Captain Bartholomew Roberts, reportedly had a proper distillation system built directly into his ship. His crew thought it was a strange idea at first. But when they spent weeks at sea without enough rain and watched their water barrels run low, that copper still became the most important piece of equipment on board. It ran slowly, producing only a few cups of clean water per hour. But those cups kept men alive. The challenge was fuel. Every piece of wood burned to boil seawater was wood that could not be used for cooking food or repairing the ship. Desperate crews burned furniture. They burned spare rope. They burned old leather boots. Anything that would produce enough heat. The smell was terrible. The process was exhausting. But it produced something no amount of wealth could buy in the middle of the open ocean. It produced water. The cleverest pirate crews did not rely on just one method. They built systems. Rain catching was the primary source when weather allowed. Dew collection ran every night as a backup. Charred barrels kept stored water safe for as long as possible. Silver coins went into every barrel to slow bacterial growth. And the distillation rig ran whenever fuel was available and the ship was calm enough to manage fire safely. Each method had weaknesses. Rain did not always come. Dew collection produced tiny amounts. Charred barrels and silver coins could preserve clean water but could not purify water that was already badly contaminated. And distillation was slow, fuel-hungry, and dangerous on a wooden ship. But together, these methods formed a survival system that kept hundreds of pirate crews alive across decades of sailing. The captains who understood water were the ones whose ships arrived at their destinations. Their crews were alive, healthy enough to sail, and ready to fight. The captains who treated water as an afterthought, who gambled on finding rain or assumed their barrels would hold, often did not survive long enough to spend whatever treasure they had found. So the next time someone tells you that pirates were simply lawless thieves with no real skill or intelligence, remember what they actually accomplished. These men were floating on the most dangerous liquid on Earth, surrounded by an ocean that wanted to kill them, with no modern science and no understanding of bacteria or chemistry. And they figured out charcoal filtration, antibacterial water treatment with silver, and the distillation of seawater into freshwater. They did it through observation, desperation, and sheer determination to stay alive one more day. They were not just pirates. They were accidental engineers. Accidental scientists. And the discoveries they made while simply trying to survive on the open ocean became part of technologies that the world still uses today. The ocean tried to kill them with thirst. They turned it into a water supply. That is not just survival. That is genius.